have to wait until they... Ooh, that's so live. Ready? Come, come, whoever you are, wonder, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wonder, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wonder, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come.
Morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where our mission is to join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world. Or in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. Great to have all of you this morning. Want to begin, as usual, by welcoming all that you bring with you this morning, all of your unique beliefs, your unique background, your lifestyle, your experiences, all that make you who you are, is welcome here this morning. And this, of course, includes everyone here, as well as those who might be hearing this for the first time, those who are joining us more recently, and of course those who are streaming with us. We're so glad to know that all of you are here. You're all equally as welcome. I don't have any special announcements today, but in case you weren't aware, today is a special day for us. It is the kickoff or start of our annual generosity campaign, in which we'll be spending the next several weeks asking for your pledges so that we can budget accordingly for the coming year. It's always an interesting and important but inevitably rewarding part of our church life, because you always come through and your generosity is so greatly appreciated and such an important part of us continuing to fulfill our mission, the mission of this congregation, the mission that we recite every Sunday together. And more importantly, I hope live out in some form every day together. But I want to particularly, in addition to thanking you for your continued support of our congregation and its mission, I want to thank the members of our generosity team. And if those of you who are here, who are on the team, wouldn't mind standing up so we could appreciate all the hard work that you put into this. There they are. thank you all so much for the great work you do and for helping us to make this a fun experience as well. And I'm going to ask one of the co-chairs, Cindy Phillips, to come forward now, and she's going to say just a little bit more about the campaign and about the reasons that she is such a stalwart supporter of this congregation. Cindy?
I'm just going to go sit down. No, kidding. So, good morning. My name is Cindy Phillips, as Todd said, and I know many of you. But last week, when I came to service, I came to the second service, and there were more people here that I had not yet met than I knew. And the place was flippin' packed. So, I'm going to, flippin'. So, I'm, more about that later. I am, as Todd said, a member of the generosity team, and today is indeed the kickoff for our annual pledge campaign. This year, our theme is Making Room. If you made a pledge last year, you should have received a packet in the mail this week outlining the year's campaign. No packet? No worries. We've got additional information at the colorful balloon sporting table in the back, and several people that would be happy to talk to you about our campaign and what our hopes and dreams are for it this year. Did you know that you can make a pledge even if you are not an official member? A pledge is a commitment to financially support this community and the work we do in the upcoming church year. We have many folks who make regular payments who have never officially joined the membership rolls, even relative newcomers. When you let us know your intentions, it helps us accurately plan our budget in the upcoming year. So please consider making a written commitment to help underwrite our work. You can do it today, and the pledge year begins the 1st of July 2018. Every Sunday for the next 7 weeks, we'll be focusing on one of our 7 principles, the principles of Unitarian Universalism. These focus and guide the many ways we make room in our religion. We've asked individuals and couples to share their connection with a particular principle and the commitment it inspires in them to financially support the church. Today's principle is the first one, the inherent worth and dignity of all people. When I first walked into the embrace of Unitarian Universalism, I was skeptical that I would truly be welcome here. I was still recovering from a stint with evangelical Christianity, married to a Mormon-turned-atheist, and the parent of 3 wildly rambunctious small children. Honestly, I was expecting we'd be immediately turned around and sent along our way. Not so. No one even flinched when I said I didn't speak in tongues and that I was pretty sure there was no personal God. The people I met were intrigued with my husband's spiritual journey, and all 3 kids remained wildly rambunctious, but they found a home here too. I give as generously as I can every year because Unitarian Universalism made room for me and for my family. You welcomed us. You recognized our inherent worth and dignity in spite of what we said and what we did and what we believed. I don't spend as much time here as I have in the past. My husband and I are retired, and our kids live literally across the country, and we finally have time and resources to just go. But we still give as generously as we can, because when I look out and around on Sunday mornings, I see new seekers, young families searching for acceptance and the opportunity to grow. I see rambunctious children who need a home here too. We've got millennials, Gen Xers, and baby boomers all looking for community, meaning, and justice. It's been a pretty wild ride in our country over the last few years. Let's reach out and find those other wanderers, worshipers, lovers of leaving. Let's make room for them too. Thank you. And I want to say that we are making room for you, all of you, back in the Friendship Hall after the second service with a big celebratory lunch. And it should be fabulous. There are vegetarian and gluten-free offerings. unbelievable desserts, including gluten-free cookies. And those of you who are so inclined, we always could use a little help with cleanup. We got lots of people to set up and serve and eat, but we are happily accepting applications for anyone who would like to use the dishwasher. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy, and again, thank you for making room in your life for us. And let's go ahead and make just a little bit of room to greet one another as we like to do each Sunday morning. I hope you'll say hi to those that you know and love, make some new friends today, and if you are joining us more recently, please don't be shy. All right, thank you so much. And yeah, by all means, not only stick around for social hour after our service, but lunch on the house as well. So lunch on the house, a donation. I thought donation meant on the house. Have I been wrong? Oh, I'm such a cheapskate. Gosh. All right, we're going to try to move forward by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our tightwadness. The symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness, including my own. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
So welcome to this place. This is by Reverend Kathy Ryan Starr. Welcome to this place of peace. May we find some moments of quiet contemplation. Welcome to this place of celebration. May our hearts soar with gratitude for the gift of life. Welcome to this place of sacred love. May we gently hold all that is broken here. Welcome to this place of inquiry. Here may we be challenged to open our minds and hearts ever wider. Come into this place of community. May we together draw the circle of love and justice ever wider. Welcome to this sacred place. Come, let us worship, celebrate, grieve, and love together.
We're going to be doing a traditional thing that we do 4 times a year today. You may notice that our banner has been changed. It's to your right, and it is now the spring banner, because in 2 days we will be having the vernal equinox, and we in this congregation, as we are engaged with the earth, like to mark those passages with a little song called Chant for the Seasons. So if you would please rise as you're willing and able to sing number 73, Chant for the Seasons, the spring verse.
Good morning. I would like to invite our young and our young at heart forward for the story for all ages. Welcome. It is so wonderful to see you all. So in keeping with the theme, I wanted to share with you all a time that room has been made for me, which has happened quite a bit in the year and a half that I've been here. But there's one particular time that springs to mind, and it has to do with the Camp Star Wheel cooks. I don't know if any of you know about the Camp Star Wheel cooks. They are a group of dads, and they've been doing it for like 10 plus years. They have a lot of ownership over it. It's their thing, and they love doing it. And it's like the ultimate group of dads. It's amazing. So last spring, we were planning Camp Star Wheel, which is our big family all-church retreat. And they had a planning session, and I went to it. And not only was this the first time that I was doing Camp Star Wheel, this was the first time that I met most of them. So I was a little nervous. I wasn't sure what it was going to be like. It's this group of dads, and here I come, this young woman who's never done this before. And I was so welcomed. They totally folded me in. There was a lot of teasing and a lot of jokes made at everybody's expense. But they heard, wow. You can hear me too. They heard me and they saw me and they made me a part of their community. And it was amazing. So, with that, I invite you to join me in singing our children and youth to their religious education classes with hymn number 413, Go Now in Peace.
Go now in peace.
As a grateful congregation, we are generous in heart, mind, and spirit. We offer so much of what we have in time, skills, and financial support to our thriving and growing ministry. To this end, we now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which sustains this community and our mission in the wider world.
And just a note, the choir will be doing a chant entitled, "We the People Change," and among the symbols in this chant is the cauldron of regeneration, which comes out of Celtic mythology, and in which the old is ever made new and the world is renewed by constant change.
We'll now kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our hearts and minds this morning. I did not get any special requests, but I know if we put our minds to it, there are an awful lot of folks to care for, things to care about, and hopefully even some things and people to celebrate. So let's step into our silence now, and as always, you'd be welcome to name some of them aloud if you'd like. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion.
So for the next few minutes, sit up, take a deep breath, get comfortable. Close your eyes if you're so inclined. This is from the Heart, Mind, and Spirit website. A person who is generous of spirit is generally considered a magnanimous person, high-minded, fair, noble, big, and worthy. It is actually a state of being. People who are generous spirits tend to extend to others what they want for themselves. It is the golden rule personified.
I'm going to invite you to turn to number 444 in the back of your gray hymnal. Number 444. If necessary, please share with a neighbor. And we'll have a responsive reading today, and I'm going to ask the congregation to begin. And since our choir is here, the choir will be our respondents, and then we'll conclude on the last verse together. Number 444. This house is for the ingathering of nature and human nature.
It is a house of friendships, a haven in trouble, an open room for the encouragement of our struggle. It is a house of freedom, guarding the dignity and worth of every person. It offers a platform for the free voice, for declaring, both in times of security and danger, the full and undivided conflict of opinion. It is a house of truth-seeking, where scientists can encourage devotion to their quest, where mystics can abide in the community of searchers. It is a house of art, adorning celebrations with melodies and handiworks. It is a house of prophecy, outrunning times past and times present, in visions of growth and progress.
This house is a cradle for our dreams, the workshop of our common endeavor.
Our special music before the sermon today is actually called Song of Community, and some of you probably already know it, and so we thought it would be fun to have this be a joint venture. The choir will sing the verses, and then would you please join us in the choruses, which will be up on the screen. And I will turn around so that you'll know when to do those choruses, because we do a verse and a chorus, and then we do two verses and a chorus, and then we do two more verses and a chorus. It's not too tough, but I think it's good to have a cue. Okay.
We'll weave a love that green sure as spring, that deepens in summer to the fall autumn brings, resting still in winter to start over again.
mountain to rain, or frost in the spring, or darkness that burns with the dawn. It's by turning, my friend, by turning that love moves on. Will we the love that opens our eyes to see one another beyond all disguise, where our joys like water will wash away lies. Together, my friends, will we born, will we born. Will we the love that touches our pain, that comes like the water to drought fevered plains, so the roots once withered see rays to the rain. Together, my friends, will we born, will we born. A love that heals, friend, and mends, friend, that rising and turning, that yields, friend, like mountain to rain, or frost in the spring, or darkness that turns with the dawn. It's by turning, my friend, by turning that love moves on. Will we the love that holds the despised, the stranger who wanders the focus of lies, will stand sure as mountains with earth's victimized. Together, my friends, will we born, will we born. Will we the love with roots growing deep, and sap pushing branches to wake from their sleep, burying leaves burned amber with warnings full sweet. Together, my friends, will we born, will we born. A love that heals, friend, that mends, friend, that rising and turning and yields, friend, like mountains to rain, or frost in the spring, or darkness that turns with the dawn. It's by turning, my friend, by turning that love moves on. Thank you.
Thank you all again for that beautiful song. I always say just to extend my gratitude just a bit more first service, but since they're leaving before I get up here, I don't. But I just want you to know that I always express much gratitude. That song deserves a lot more than just say thanks, you know. So it always does, Deb. Thank you so much. I want to begin by saying that religion often gives religion a bad name. This is so, at least in part, because instead of connecting and unifying us, which is what the word religion actually means, to connect. It's more often used as a high and mighty excuse to discriminate against and segregate ourselves from one another. On a couple of occasions, for example, one of our church storytellers has told a local Coeur d'Alene Indian myth about a monster that's been swallowing up all the animal tribes in the region until it gets tricked into swallowing Coyote, who frees everyone, I should say, by killing the monster from the inside out. Coyote then distributes the monster's remains around the region, using them to create its various human tribes, the Spokane and Kalispell in the west, the Kootenai and Pend Oreille in the north, the Flathead in the east, and the Coeur d'Alene and Nez Perce in the south. This isn't unlike what may be a more familiar myth to many of us, the Hebrew tale of the Tower of Babel. Remember that one? Seeks to explain why there are so many different people in the world. According to the story, survivors of the great flood planned to build a tower high enough to reach heaven. Yahweh disliked the idea of having so many people at his doorstep, so he confuses their speech so that they can no longer understand each other or work together, destroys their tower, then disperses them to all different parts of the world. And according to Jeffrey Broad's book on world religions, even the Australian Aborigines believe that their magical ancestors, responsible for creating the world in the dream time, organized humans into tribes, specified the territory each tribe was to occupy, and determined each tribe's language, social rules, and customs. Myths like these were created to help our ancestors explain why things are the way that they are. In this case, why there are other people and why they speak other languages and have different ways. What I notice about them is that they all consider such segregation the result of magical or divine causes beyond our control. Hence, segregation seems natural. There's nothing we can do about it. It's not our fault. We might as well accept it's just the way things are and the way things always will be. In this way, by explaining why things are the way they are, myths like these foster a mindset of isolation and superiority and justify our enmity and exploitation toward others. And that's the problem with myths, especially when they become the basis for a religion. They form the foundations of our behavior, leading us to actually reenact or live those myths out in real life. If thunder and lightning are explained by gods striking their weapons and waging war in the heavens, then we must emulate them with our own weapons and wars. Likewise, if the gods have segregated us from each other, then we should segregate ourselves from each other. It's only right. If God has set us apart, chosen us, and led us to the promised land, then we should consider ourselves better and more deserving than anyone else, even if they are in our way, already living on the land we consider ours by divine right. In American history, for example, white masters initially rejected the attempts of the missionaries to convert their slaves to Christianity. For how could a Christian, they reasoned, rightly continue enslaving a fellow Christian? Not to mention that the enslavement of Christians was illegal according to English common law. So they considered their slaves as being of a different race, inherently incapable of becoming Christians due to their innate inferiority and sinfulness. But eventually, Christian leaders argued that they weren't making slaves of Christians, but Christians of slaves, and found biblical support for putting the onus on the slaves to obey their masters. In 1724, for example, Reverend Hugh Jones, a William and Mary College professor, wrote, "Christianity encourages and orders people to become more humble and better servants," adding that blacks were by nature cut out for hard labor and fatigue. In other words, to be a good Christian meant being an obedient slave, which just so happened to benefit those in power. So these myths about the way things are, explaining things as completely out of our control, enable us to see ourselves as passive actors caught up in the natural or divinely ordained circumstances of life, with no power and no responsibility to shape a world that is more just and inclusive. People are different. That's just the way it is. Some people are better off than others. That's just the way it is. Some people are more deserving than others. That's just the way it is. Myths of segregation and inequality are also made manifest through our devotion to false beliefs about rightness and righteousness, of property and borders, and of course the unfounded belief that there are different races. Religion in particular, through its insistence on the absolute truths or truth of its doctrines and creeds, which make it not only ideologically right, but morally righteous, and those who disagree with it, ideologically and morally wrong, has throughout history and to this day excused all manner of evil against others. Ordained not by the perpetrators of such evil, they think, but by God Himself. And those responsible for such injustice and atrocity, from the Crusades and Inquisitions of yesterday to homophobic legislation and ISIS today, conveniently see themselves only as passive actors doing what nature and God intends. The myth of property, that we have a right to draw imaginary boundaries on paper and call the place our land or our country, or that few deserve more wealth at the expense of almost everyone and everything else, or that we should build walls to keep others out and pass laws to keep others down and out, is also excused by these stories of natural segregation. A parable attributed to Jesus addressed the problem 2,000 years ago. It's about a wealthy landowner who buys a vineyard, puts a fence around it, builds a tower to live in, and finally moves far away, leaving his oppressed servants to run things. By building a fence, he isolates himself from others, puts himself above them, symbolized by the tower, and finally distances himself from them so he doesn't have to acknowledge how his greed is ruining their lives. It reminds me of a line in John Denver's song, Raven's Child, about those who exploit others, in which he refers to them as being away and above and apart. In the end, the landowner in Jesus' story is completely baffled when his servants revolt, unable to comprehend why they're so angry, because he's so out of touch. In our age of enormous income inequality, this parable may be more relevant today than it ever has been. And of course, the miserable myth of race, of different tribes being part of the natural order, of certain people being chosen and blessed, and of others being inherently cursed, remains the cornerstone of our society and our economy. Even though since the human genome was successfully mapped more than 25 years ago now, science has proven there is no such thing as race. All people, no matter the color of our skin, are genetically the same. Another way to put it is when Scientists examine the genes of different people. They can't tell if they're Hispanic, Asian, Caucasian, or African American. As Craig Venter, one of the scientists involved in the Genome Project, told reporters, the concept of race has no genetic or scientific basis. And yet, too many of us continue to speak of race as if it is a reality and not a myth, and behave as if it is a reality and not a myth. In his biography, psychologist Carl Jung said, as early as 1909, I realized that I could not treat latent psychosis if I did not understand their symbolism. It was then I began studying mythology. Psychoses are mental illnesses that cause people to mistake their own thoughts and feelings with external empirical realities. Today we are considering a few myths of human dispersion and segregation that portray our separateness as natural or divinely ordained to get at the social psychoses that they've caused, like extremist ideology, income and political inequality, and racism, as well as war and violence. For they're not just the foolish stories of our primitive ancestors, but reflect the oldest of our paradigms, ancient patterns of psychotic thinking and behavior that continue to this day. After 9/11, for example, the entire world, including our Muslim neighbors, stood with the United States and felt, as a French paper articulated, we are all Americans now. Yet instead of seizing that opportunity to usher in an unprecedented era of global unity, the illegitimately elected Bush administration, I've not forgotten, chose the very real destruction of what was once the tallest tower in human history to justify further dividing the human family, going to war with Islam and attacking a country that had absolutely nothing to do with that terrible attack. The result has been prejudice and discrimination against Muslim Americans, war with Muslim nations, retaliatory terrorist attacks around the globe, and the rise of militant Islamic organizations like ISIS, Boko Haram, Al-Qaeda, and the reemergence of the Taliban. As in the old myth of Babel, the tower was destroyed and the world became more divided and less able to understand each other than ever. I bring this up today as we consider our church and the reasons we support it, because Unitarian Universalism offers a different paradigm that instead of further dividing us longs to bring more people together. As John Murray, the founder of American Universalism, famously said, "Go out into the highways and byways of America to give the people blanketed with a decaying and crumbling religion something of your new vision. You may possess only a small light, but uncover it, let it shine, use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of men and women. Give them not hell, but hope and courage." Today, 200 years after Murray spoke these inspiring and challenging words, 2,000 years after Jesus told his parable of the unjust landowner who set himself away and above and apart, and 1,000 more years since the Hebrews first told the story of Babel, the world still needs us to put our Unitarian faith into action by uniting our world and making universalism a reality by bringing all people together as one. With many creeds, colors, cultures, yes, but one people, brothers and sisters, all. And this is why, for this year's generosity campaign, we've chosen the theme of making room. For our religion does not seek to construct ziggurats so that we can climb stairways to heaven to imitate our imaginary gods, away and above and apart. We don't seek lofty positions from which we can look down upon others, or remove ourselves from them, or build trade centers so tall that the wealth that flows through them is out of reach for most people. As Unitarian Universalists, we don't build upwardly, stacking the odds in our favor, piling up riches, or pointing our gaze upward to the heavens, longing for power and glory. We don't erect systems of inequality and unevenness of those above and those below. As Unitarian Universalists, rather than building things up for a privileged few, our religion requires us to build outwardly, making room for everyone, especially those the old systems and myths of segregation and separation have left out. What Murray called our small light, I like to call our tiny pebble of faith. For it may be small, representing far less than just 1% of our population. Yet it is large enough to cast into the sea of humanity and cause its waters to ripple endlessly outward, creating ever-increasing circles of inclusion, ever-widening circles of inclusion. In this way, our faith can save the world. Not one person or one soul at a time, as the old myths say must happen. For we do not gather a small collection of souls. We embrace all souls. Instead of saving souls, we embrace forgotten souls by making room, widening our circle, rippling outward into the highways and byways, creating hope and courage where there has been fear and despair. As I've said before, and often remind myself, the Hebrew word for salvation, Yeshua, from which we get names like Joshua and Jesus, doesn't refer to saving individual fallen souls as the old myth of control and domination of a way above and apart has come to interpret it. But as Gerald May says in his book, The Awakened Heart, it connotes space and the freedom and security which is gained by the removal of constriction. In other words, the original meaning of salvation wasn't saving souls, it was making room. And there are so many ways to make room, to remove the constrictions, the barriers, the walls, the borders and rules and systems that keep people out. Because unlike building isolated towers too high for most people to climb, making room requires us to reach out in every direction. We make room literally by making our space more welcoming and inviting and ready to accommodate those wishing to become part of our community. Having more than enough chairs, for example, as mundane as that may sound, is a vital part of making room. As Robert Latham says in his book, Moving from Church Folly Lane, church consultants believe that when a sanctuary is 80% full, not 100% full, 80% full, the message is that there is no more room available for new people. The message is the same as a no vacancy sign. But such accommodations aren't easy because they take risk and they take resources. Today we have almost 400 members and about 200 chairs in our sanctuary. 2 restrooms, 1 water fountain, and no air conditioning in our religious education wing. For those new to our church, I do apologize for these shortcomings, but please know that we are working on it and that you are welcome here. Making room, as I said, is a continuing process of ever widening our circle, of making it roomier and more inclusive as we grow and as we go. Shortly after I came here, going on 7 years now, hard to believe, I walked into our empty sanctuary one morning with its architect, beloved church member Moritz Kundig, who said, "I remember when we built this place, we said, we'll never have to worry about filling this place up." Yet today we have 2 services to accommodate everyone wishing to be here, with more people joining every year. But don't worry about our cramped quarters, because making room is who we are. Making room is what we do. It's what we've always done. Our church began 131 years ago with 20 founding members at the Spokane Opera House. A year later, they started constructing our first church building ever, a 275-seat meeting house at the corner of Jefferson and Sprague. For a while, our attendance grew large enough they had to move from there to the Clemmer Theater, now the Bing, to accommodate everyone who wanted to come. And after a period of moving from one place to the next, we settled for about 15 years in the old Jewish synagogue, and later purchased the Patrick Welsh House, which is now known as the Glover Mansion. And during the 50 years there, we had to construct a separate sanctuary on the property to accommodate growth. And when we outgrew that space, our members found a way to build the magnificent church building we're in now. So like I said, even if we could use more seats, restrooms, drinking fountains, air conditioning in the RE wing, don't give up on us. We're working on it, because working on making room is something we've continued to work on since we started in 1887. It's who we are, it's what we do. Making room is also why we recently began taking advantage of technology to stream our services for those who can't be here on Sundays, and why we'll continue to make use of new technologies as they advance. It's also why this past year our church joined the sanctuary movement, so that, if necessary, we can hold space for those whom others in our world are threatening to cast out. Improving our space, embracing those who are left out, reaching out to those who can't come, are just a few of the ways that we're making room. As I said, making room requires us to widen the circle in every direction and in many ways. This is why most of you, I trust, not only tolerate but appreciate a minister who, rather than giving you false assurances and easing your mind each week, challenges your paradigms and constantly tries to stir things up. Thank you. Thank you. Because as Unitarian Universalists, we're making room in our heads for new ideas. We want open minds, and we don't mind having our minds blown wide open. We don't want our questions answered, we want our answers questioned, because that's part of what making room means for us. Making room in our hearts is just as important as making rooms in our head. The psychotic myth of building up, of domination from the top down, requires us to close our hearts for it to work. You can't treat people you consider your equals unjustly. It requires us to close our hearts, to build walls and borders and rules to keep people down and out. But our story and history of making room calls upon us to open our hearts to love. We reject the mindset that criticizes and condemns us as sympathizers and traitors for loving our enemies, welcoming outcasts, and demanding an end to war and violence. We reject the mindset that considers men who love each other and women who love each other as queer, or that dismisses those who say we must care for the poor, heal the sick, educate our children as do-gooders and bleeding hearts, or that calls those who want a level playing field for the workers in this country un-American, or that ridicules those working to protect our environment as tree huggers. For we know that making room means opening our hearts, that having sympathy can never be a betrayal, that there's nothing queer about loving each other, and that hearts are made for bleeding and arms are made for hugging. So they can poke fun of us, demonize us, they can even criminalize us, but making room in our hearts is what our faith is all about. It's also important, hard as it can be, to make room in our church and in our lives for new ways, for doing things differently. It's hard because, like all beings, we're creatures of habit. Our habitual ways give us comfort, they make us feel safe, they make us feel right, and therefore righteous. I can't recall the number of times I've discussed changing some little thing in the churches I've ministered at, like moving furniture around or adding something new, and have been told why it would be morally wrong to do so. That's where we go, isn't it? Opening our minds to new paradigms and our hearts to others seems the easy part for us, but changing our habits or the way of doing things is about as difficult for Unitarian Universalist as anyone else. As Alice Mann says in her book on church growth, it's not uncommon for parishioners to want to add 100 new members to the parish, but be unwilling to change one thing about their parish to accommodate the increase. Fortunately, as I've already shown, our church ultimately understands the need to sometimes make big changes and has a history of continually making room for others. Today, the ancient myth of segregation and separation, of dominance and exclusion remains strong. That's why the world needs us to counter it with our story of making room, by opening our doors, opening our minds, opening our hearts, and opening our lives to new ways and new possibilities. It's why I thank you for your tremendous support of this church, as together we cast our pebbles in the troubled waters to create ever-widening circles of inclusion. Thank you.
So we're going to do a kind of a rouser at the end. It's called We're Going to Sit at the Welcome Table. So please rise, and we're going to do some of that clapping and sing with me 407. We're going to sit at the welcome table.
Hallelujah, we're gonna sit at the welcome
so much. So a gift is pure when it is given from the heart to the right person at the right time and at the right place, and when we contemplate nothing in return. The Bhagavad Gita.
Do you want to see?